Long before George Washington became America's first president, he learned one of the most important lessons of his military career. During the French and Indian War, the young Virginia officer discovered that courage and superior weapons alone could not guarantee victory. The commander who possessed the best intelligence often held the greatest advantage before the first musket was ever fired. It was a lesson Washington would never forget.
In 1755, Washington joined General Edward Braddock's expedition to capture the French stronghold at Fort Duquesne. Nearly 2,000 British soldiers marched confidently through unfamiliar wilderness, but they possessed very little reliable intelligence concerning French positions or Native American movements.
On July 9, 1755, Braddock's army was devastated. Hidden attackers struck from every direction. General Braddock was mortally wounded. Hundreds of British soldiers fell. Washington narrowly escaped death after bullets tore through his coat and 2 horses were shot beneath him. That terrible defeat convinced him that an army marching without reliable intelligence marched toward disaster.
The experience permanently shaped Washington's thinking. He learned to trust experienced scouts. He learned to verify reports. Most importantly, he learned that accurate intelligence could save thousands of lives. Those lessons remained with him for more than 20 years.
When the American Revolution began, Congress selected George Washington to command the Continental Army. He inherited an inexperienced force with limited supplies and little formal training. Yet his greatest weakness was something far less visible. He knew almost nothing about British military plans. In the summer of 1776, Great Britain assembled one of the largest overseas expeditionary forces in its history and occupied New York City. From this heavily defended stronghold, British commanders planned campaigns against the struggling Continental Army. Washington desperately needed spies behind enemy lines. Every decision became a gamble. Where would the British attack next? How many reinforcements were arriving? What were General Sir Henry Clinton's intentions? Washington remembered the disasters he had witnessed during the French and Indian War. He refused to fight another war blindly. Among Washington's most trusted young officers was Major Benjamin Tallmadge. Intelligent, disciplined, and fiercely loyal, Tallmadge understood the value of secrecy and careful planning. Washington entrusted him with creating an intelligence network capable of operating inside British-occupied New York. Tallmadge immediately thought of a childhood friend, Abraham Woodhull. Living on occupied Long Island, Woodhull could travel between British territory and Patriot communities without immediately attracting suspicion. He would become the first link in an extraordinary chain of spies. The assignment carried enormous risk. Anyone captured gathering intelligence for the Continental Army could be imprisoned or hanged as a spy. After careful consideration, Woodhull accepted. Benjamin Tallmadge had recruited the first member of what would soon become America's most successful intelligence network. To protect every participant, Tallmadge introduced code names and secret methods of communication. George Washington became Agent 711. Abraham Woodhull became Samuel Culper. Real names would disappear from every report. The network's greatest protection would be secrecy. The foundations had been laid. Ordinary citizens were about to undertake extraordinary missions deep inside enemy territory. Their reports would influence military strategy, help expose enemy plans, and become one of the greatest intelligence operations of the American Revolution. History would remember them as the Culper Spy Ring. With Abraham Woodhull established on Long Island, the network still lacked one essential element: someone living inside British-occupied New York City. That man was Robert Townsend. A respected merchant and newspaper publisher, Townsend moved freely throughout the city while quietly observing the daily activities of British officers, government officials, merchants, and military suppliers. Few suspected the quiet businessman standing nearby was secretly gathering intelligence for George Washington. Coffee houses and taverns became Townsend's greatest sources of information.
British officers often discussed troop movements, naval operations, supply shipments, and military strategy in what they believed was friendly company. Townsend rarely asked questions. Instead, he listened carefully, remembered every detail, and quietly carried those conversations home. Every report had to be exact. Benjamin Talmadge demanded accuracy above everything else. Rumors were rejected. Facts were verified. Lives depended upon every message. Townsend carefully transformed what he had seen and heard into detailed intelligence reports destined for Washington's headquarters. Delivering the reports required another trusted patriot. Austin Roe operated a tavern in Setauket, but regularly traveled to New York on legitimate business. Hidden among ordinary goods were Townsend's intelligence reports. To British patrols, he appeared to be nothing more than another hard-working merchant traveling familiar roads. Perhaps the most ingenious member of the network was Anna Strong. Instead of carrying dangerous messages, she communicated using laundry. A black petticoat hanging from her clothesline signaled that courier Caleb Brewster had arrived safely. The number of white handkerchiefs identified the exact landing place. To passing British soldiers, it looked like ordinary household chores. To the Culper Ring, it was a carefully designed signaling system. Caleb Brewster accepted perhaps the most dangerous responsibility in the entire organization. Using small whaleboats, he crossed Long Island Sound under the cover of darkness, carrying intelligence reports through waters patrolled by the Royal Navy. Storms, strong currents, and British warships constantly threatened every mission. Yet Brewster completed crossing after crossing with extraordinary courage. Talmadge understood that good intelligence required good security. The network used invisible ink known as sympathetic stain. Secret numerical codebooks replaced names with numbers. George Washington became Agent 711. Entire locations, military units, and important individuals were concealed behind coded numbers. Even intercepted letters often appeared meaningless to British authorities. One report rarely determined Washington's decisions. Instead, he compared multiple intelligence reports before taking action. His painful experiences during the French and Indian War had taught him never to rely upon a single source. Carefully verified intelligence became one of his greatest military advantages. Piece by piece, the Culper Ring became a perfectly coordinated intelligence network. Each member knew only the information necessary to perform a single assignment. If one spy were captured, the others might remain safe. That careful organization made the network extraordinarily difficult for British intelligence to penetrate. By 1779, George Washington possessed something he had desperately lacked only a few years earlier: reliable eyes and ears inside British headquarters. The young officer who had learned the painful price of poor intelligence during the French and Indian War had finally built the intelligence network he had always believed America needed. Although history remembers Abraham Woodhull, Robert Townsend, Benjamin Talmadge, Anna Strong, Caleb Brewster, and Austin Roe as the best-known members of the Culper Ring, they were not alone. Early courier Jonas Hawkins helped move intelligence before Austin Roe assumed that responsibility. Hercules Mulligan, a New York tailor with influential British customers, secretly gathered valuable military information for the Patriot cause. Some historians also believe Loyalist printer James Rivington quietly supplied intelligence to the Americans during the later years of the war. Together, these men and women formed an extraordinary network whose success depended upon absolute secrecy and unwavering trust. Among the intelligence reaching Washington were reports that the British intended to weaken the American cause by circulating counterfeit continental currency. Rather than defeating the revolution on the battlefield alone, British leaders also sought to undermine the fragile American economy. The Culper Ring provided Washington with valuable insight into these efforts and other British operations unfolding inside occupied New York. In 1780, the Revolution faced one of its greatest crises. American General Benedict Arnold secretly agreed to surrender the fortress at West Point to the British.
Major John Andre crossed into American territory to finalize the arrangement. Although Andre's capture was carried out by New York militiamen rather than members of the Culper Ring, Washington's intelligence network helped maintain broader awareness of British activity during this dangerous period. By 1781, Benjamin Talmadge coordinated reports from the Culper Ring concerning the Marquis de Lafayette tracking Cornwallis across Virginia, French commanders sharing naval intelligence, and local Patriot scouts reporting British movements. Together, these streams of information allowed Washington to make one of the boldest strategic decisions of the American Revolution, secretly marching his army south to Yorktown while convincing the British that New York remained his true objective. After Yorktown, the war was effectively over. After the war, the members of the Culper Ring quietly returned to their ordinary lives. Most never sought recognition. Many carried their secrets to the grave. For decades, few Americans even knew their names. Yet George Washington never forgot what they had accomplished. The painful lessons he learned as a young officer during the French and Indian War convinced him that information could be as powerful as an army. The Culper Ring proved him right. Through courage, patience, discipline, and absolute secrecy, ordinary citizens built America's first successful intelligence network. Their legacy would influence generations of military and intelligence professionals, proving that history is often changed not only by soldiers on the battlefield, but by the quiet men and women working in the shadows. Thank you for watching.